Real quick, go check out Jayatal, the UK's most exciting electronic music duo. Their newest release, Connected, is available wherever you get music. It's energetic, melodic blast of electronica, ingeniously infused with acoustic instruments, and they support The David Pakman Show. Check them out using the link below. We're starting today with the president. Yes, the president, Joe Biden, who is showing more signs of life than we've seen for months from the standpoint of his presidency. Joe Biden riding high on a number of major accomplishments, went to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania yesterday, and he absolutely crushed Republicans who are now openly threatening violence. We covered 2 days ago Republican Senator Lindsey Graham saying, if Trump is indicted, there will be riots in the street. Yeah, it'll be Trumpists rioting in the streets. We know, Lindsey. And Joe Biden with, I have to say, I'm not adding a value judgment to this, but Joe Biden more fired up and energetic, I would argue, than I have seen him his entire presidency, as we are now just weeks from the 2022 midterms on which so much ride. Take a look at this.
So let me say this to my MAGA Republican friends in Congress.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you won't condemn what happened on the 6th.
Right.
Don't tell me.
Right.
Can't do it. For God's sake, whose side are you on?
Not law enforcement.
Whose side are you on? Look.
Simple.
You're either on the side of a mob or the side of the police. You can't be pro-law enforcement and pro-insurrection. You can't be a party of law and order and call the people who attacked the police on January 6th patriots.
Right.
You can't do it. What are we teaching our children? It's just that simple. And now it's sickening to see the new attacks on the FBI, threatening the life of law enforcement agents and their families for simply carrying out the law and doing their job. Look.
Listen, we saw this type of thing from California Governor Gavin Newsom about a month ago. And I told you that without endorsing his entire political worldview, that it was the exact right approach to dealing with these modern MAGA Republicans. Democrats have to be aggressive. Democrats in some cases have to be ruthless. It doesn't mean we do the things they do. We don't tell lies. We don't deal. But we have to adopt this approach. And Democrats should be looking at the approach that Gavin Newsom is taking. Democrats should be looking at this particular version of Joe Biden. And just think about the opposite for a second. Imagine if you had Democrats openly threatening law enforcement in the way that Republicans have done after January 6th, after the search warrant being carried out at Mar-a-Lago. The Republicans would be saying, forget about due process, throw him in prison for life. And I was glad to also see Joe Biden call out Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, who predicted, by which I mean threatened or promised, riots if Donald Trump were to be indicted. It's a great thing that Joe Biden is going right after him as well.
No one expects politics to be a patty cake. It sometimes gets mean as hell. But the idea you turn on the television and see senior senators and congressmen saying, if such and such happens, there'll be blood in the street. Where the hell are we?
Right. And of course, a direct reference there to Lindsey Graham. This is a much more interesting Joe Biden. Look at the Joe Biden of the last 3 months. Number one, rhetorically fiery again, energetic, accomplished more during his COVID isolation than Trump did his entire presidency, if you can imagine that. And now we see a great jobs report. Inflation is down. Gas prices are down. The Inflation Reduction Act has been passed, the PACT Act, the infrastructure bill. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm not going to give you the full list every single time, but accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment. This is a very different Joe Biden than we saw earlier in the presidency, or sort of in the middle of the presidency. And it's also a Democratic Party whose chances in November of 2022 are looking dramatically better. So we're going to follow it very closely. And by the way, in the middle of all of this, we are seeing some Republicans so disgusted by the low quality candidates that their primary voters have selected to represent them in November, that in some races, Republicans are increasingly endorsing Democrats. And that's what we're going to talk about next. In Pennsylvania, a disgusting man has been nominated by Republicans to potentially be the next governor of Pennsylvania. And sadly, it is a man named Doug Mastriano who, if given the opportunity in 2024 to steal Pennsylvania for the eventual Republican presidential nominee, he would do it. There are two choices in Pennsylvania for governor. There's Doug Mastriano, who is a big lie promulgator and a guy who would do all the things Trump wanted governors to do for him in 2020. And then you've got Democratic nominee Josh Shapiro. There's not that much to say about Josh Shapiro. He's a completely standard milquetoast, and I don't say that in a pejorative, he's just a normal Democrat who wouldn't do anything crazy. He wouldn't try to steal an election. And that's pretty damn good right now because of what the Republican Party has become. And now to add on to the absurdity of Doug Mastriano, it turns out that Doug Mastriano once donned a Confederate uniform while he was in the military. And as a result, more and more Republicans are endorsing his Democratic opponent, Josh Shapiro. Business Insider reports 7 more Republican leaders endorsed Democrat Josh Shapiro for Pennsylvania governor, following news of Mastriano wearing a Confederate military uniform. 7 more Republicans have announced their endorsement for Democrat Josh Shapiro 1 month after 9 Republicans called his Republican opponent, Doug Mastriano, an extremist. A photo obtained by Reuters showed Mastriano posing in a Confederate military uniform. This is the picture which we're putting up on the screen for you here, and it is completely vile. This is a picture from 2014. It was taken while then State Senator Doug Mastriano was part of the faculty at the U.S. Army War College. Faculty members were permitted to pose for the photo while dressed as historical figures, and Mastriano chose a Confederate uniform, and now is losing the support of at least a number of Republicans. So, we can talk all day about the Confederate uniform. We can say, well, it is a historical reality that there were Confederate soldiers, and so it's not necessarily reflective of his right. I'm an idiot. I sound like an idiot when I try to say this. Okay. The fact that he is wearing the uniform alone doesn't mean Doug Mastriano wishes we could bring back the enslaving of black people. I'm not saying that, but this is all part of a picture, right? This is all part of the bigger picture about Doug Mastriano and who he is. Big lie, conspiracy theorist, unhinged, number one. Secondly, has this campaign advisor who is overtly as anti-Semitic as anyone I've ever heard of, short of, right? I mean, World War II era German leaders, said that Jews don't even have a place in the Republican Party, even if they're conservative. Disgusting, right? And then Mastriano wears a Confederate uniform. So we're building up a picture that is based on a number of different pillars, and they're all disgusting, rotting pillars covered in pond scum. So it would be great, on the one hand, if the more moderate establishment Republicans jump ship from these disgusting MAGA people. That's a good thing because we want the MAGA people to lose. On the other hand, if it goes too far, those very moderate Republicans might end up running as Democrats, and it could end up moving the Democratic Party to the right, which we also don't want. We want the Democratic Party moving to the left. And so that's a consideration, and that's a concern as well. But it's really important, really important. I mean, Pennsylvania is one of the most important states. And you know, I'm not saying some states don't matter, but, you know, Wyoming, even though Liz Cheney lost her primary, that's going to be a Republican member of Congress either way. Wyoming is not going to be the difference maker over the next 2 years in the United States. On the other hand, look at Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a state on which control of the Senate could hinge, meaning that the Oz versus Fetterman race is extraordinarily important. And Pennsylvania is a state on which the 2024 presidential election could hinge. And thus, having a governor in Pennsylvania who won't try to steal the state's electors for the candidate that didn't win, that's an important thing. And so that's why we need Josh Shapiro to be the next governor of Pennsylvania, not Doug Mastriano, who is just absolutely and completely vile. So if you live in Pennsylvania, of course, you should vote in both of those elections. But no matter where you live, you can phone bank and you can donate in those two races. And they are very, very important races. Just Mastriano is disgusting. He's really the worst of MAGAT politics. And hopefully we can defeat him in November, and then he just goes away. Today is the David Pakman Show member town hall. The day has finally come, Wednesday, August 31st, unless you're listening to this on a different day. Wednesday, August 31st is today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. We will be doing a member town hall. It will be broadcast for all to see on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. But for this particular one, the participants will be our members at joinpakman.com. And you can sign up right up until the start of the town hall at joinpakman.com so that you can participate today. One of our sponsors today is GIGA-CRINGE. GIGA-CRINGE is a stellar melodic dance music duo and one of the UK's most exciting electronic acts. GIGA-CRINGE have made their name through legendary live shows that incorporate drums, guitar, electronics. Taking them on tours across Europe, they've appeared on BBC. Their newest release, called Connected, will knock you off your feet, written and recorded entirely remotely during COVID. My favorite track from the album is the one you're hearing right now, called It's Coming Round Again. Probably because I'm a drummer, but I love acoustic drums accompanied by a bed of electronic layers, and the track really gets the drums going. In all of their music, even something as simple as the synth bass sounds like it was carefully adjusted for hours to hit your ear just the right way. These guys will take you on a journey. And GIGA-CRINGE are big fans of the David Pakman Show. If you like unusual but deeply gratifying electronica, check out GIGA-CRINGE on their new release, Connected. Wherever you stream or buy music, they're on YouTube and social media. You can book them for a show, and you can find them using the link below. Well, my disappointment with podcaster Joe Rogan continues to grow. The latest is that Rogan called Donald Trump's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, the Michael Jordan of press secretaries. The truth, of course, could not be more different. Kayleigh McEnany, one of the most dishonest press secretaries that I have ever covered, and this dates back to the George W. Bush administration, quite frankly. Hard to find a more dishonest press secretary. Now, unfortunately, I think what Rogan is falling prey to is sometimes people sound really confident, but the things they say are absurd. This is sometimes called Ben Shapiro syndrome, where people will very confidently say things that are wrong, dishonest, absurd, pathetic, not based in fact. And Kayleigh McEnany did that. She sounded very confident, but she didn't really answer questions, and she lied absolutely all the time. So this is part of the continued disappointment with what has been going on with Rogan. And again, speculation is he moved to Texas. Reports are he sometimes hangs around with extremists like Republican Governor Greg Abbott and others. And there may be some sort of, I don't know about audience capture, but maybe like social circle capture of sorts. Here's Rogan talking about Kayleigh McEnany.
She was a propagandist. I mean, when she's working for the White House, she's this person that, answers questions, and most of it, the hard questions, are all by Peter Doocy on Fox.
So, by the way, here he's criticizing Jen Psaki, who is Biden's former press secretary, who I have to tell you, by and large, was a more honest press secretary. Of course, they all spin. But in terms of out and out lies, Psaki was dramatically more honest than any of Trump's press secretaries.
He was like the only guy that was like pushing back against her. And she just flat out lied on not just one occasion, multiple occasions. I mean, maybe they had a narrative that they told her. Maybe these are talking points. Maybe that's her job. But it's a weird job in the beginning, right? To begin with, because it's a job where you're not even asking the president. You're asking this White House press secretary.
Yeah.
So there's a person, and the only one that was good at that girl, McEnany, what's her name? Kayleigh McEnany, the one who worked for Trump. That lady was a assassin. That lady had like binders with like footnotes, and anyone would say some shit. That's interesting because actually CNN said this. And
right. Those were all distortions. And this is the problem with optics. And it's really sad. You wouldn't necessarily think, and in Rogan's defense, not that I need to defend him, maybe he didn't really watch an entire press briefing to understand that the binders and the confident responses, it was built on nothing. It was just smoke and mirrors.
And she would like quote it back to them and stuff it in their face. That lady's the best ever at that job. She's the Michael Jordan of White House press secretaries.
I mean, obviously that it's really disappointing to hear that, because a critical thinker would say, let's separate substance from tone and delivery. Let's separate the facts or lack thereof from the optics. And I mean, listen, Kayleigh McEnany promulgated the big lie. Is there a bigger lie than Trump actually won the 2020 election? And she lied endlessly beyond that and defended the indefensible. Everything that Trump was doing, everything Trump did, she defended, from the, COVID-laced joyride with Secret Service around the hospital. Like, I could spend an hour giving you the list. There was nothing she would not defend. So when we say she was great at her job, she sounded confident, which is something, unfortunately, lots of right wingers do when they say things that are completely untrue and bogus. And of course, you can just go back and find all of the different things that she lied about. McEnany made weeks of press statements about Trump never downplayed coronavirus. Trump literally said we have 15 cases, which will soon be 0. There is no bigger downplaying than when you end up with 100 million cases. There's no bigger downplaying than that. And she did that for weeks and weeks and weeks. She made the same false claims about the Mueller report that Trump would make. It exonerated him. It literally did not exonerate him. It said we cannot clear him of obstruction. The 2020 election lies. Constantly exaggerating number. I'm not going to bore you with it, but the point is, hard to find a more dishonest press secretary. And sadly, Rogan seems to have fallen for it. This is just unbelievable. There's now a picture of the top secret documents that Trump had at Mar-a-Lago. And every detail is insane, including the crass, cheesy, casino-style carpets that Trump seems to love everywhere in his residence. But we're going to get to that. Remember the shifting narratives. We didn't have any documents. If there were documents there, the FBI planted them. Well, but they weren't classified, but they weren't secret. Well, they were, but I declassified them. They're back to they were planted. We'll get to that tomorrow, on and on and on. But all along, sowing doubt. We now have the pictures, and it's wild. And there is reason to believe, per the feds now, that the Trump circle was specifically trying to obstruct the investigation by moving documents around. You just have to see this to believe it. So first report, Associated Press. Feds cite efforts to obstruct probe of documents at Trump estate. The Justice Department says classified documents were likely concealed and removed from a storage room at former President Donald Trump's Florida estate as part of an effort to obstruct the federal investigation into the discovery of the government records. So understand the meaning of that, okay? The Trump people were insisting when they asked us for the documents in June, we gave them to them. When they told us to put a lock on the door, we put a lock on the door. We then get the affidavit, and there's nothing about a lock. The entire lock thing was just fabricated as based on what we know right now. Nobody ever said everything's cool as long as you put a lock on the door, a padlock, if you can imagine. So that ends up being a lie. And then also, of course, the idea that they gave all the documents back is what is obviously debunked by this picture, which we were putting up on the screen for you. And if you look at this picture, you see all sorts of documents, some in very, very large letters marked secret or top secret, and they are on the floor of Trump's office. You can see some framed Time magazine covers on the right side of the image. And then you see these just the casino rugs. You know, it's a reminder that money can't buy you class. The fact that Donald Trump puts literal casino rugs in his office or bedroom or around his toilet, wherever it is that this is. This is absolutely extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And the report is that federal prosecutors believe that certain pages of the records were actually torn up. Now, if that is true, for a normal person, you would be barred from ever holding public office ever again in the United States. Unfortunately, that's not really enough. Prison is what is deserved. Remember Reality Winner, who ended up with, I don't want to misstate, but was it 4 or 5 years for one page that we're talking about? One page. This is just pages upon pages upon pages, any one of which could dump people in prison just for a single one. And it's just page after page with prosecutors believing that some of these were torn up. So there should be prison time. That I'm not making a prediction that there will be, but there should be prison time here. And then we, of course, have to go back to what was the point of having these documents? And speculation is quite broad about what they were there for. Is it that it was a way for Trump to stroke his own ego, to show visitors, hey, look at what I've got here. I've got the latest was documents on Emmanuel Macron's sex life or whatever. Not that those would necessarily be the most classified, but putting that aside, was it to stroke his ego by showing them to people? I mean, did he plan to sell them at some point, which is a whole other crazy thing. And it's speculative, of course. One thing I'm increasingly thinking is that law enforcement has not yet even recovered all of the documents that they're aware Trump had at one point. It seems to me, particularly with this paragraph about there's a belief some documents, some pages were torn up, and why the hell would some of them be torn up? Again, we can only speculate about why that would be. My guess is part of the reason that this is all happening is the FBI still to this day, as we are about to start September of 2022, doesn't actually have knowledge of the whereabouts of every single one of these documents. So as far as prison, someone must be heading to prison. I don't expect it to be Trump. But could this end up being it's all an oopsie and no one is going to prison at all for the increasingly egregious violations that we are learning about taking place here? It would be stunning if that were the case. And the picture is just too much. Now, initially, it was believed or reported that the documents splayed all over the floor was how they were found by the FBI. That appears not to be the case. It seems as though they were placed on the floor with an exhibit number in order to be photographed by the FBI, but that they were not actually found in that state. If they were, that's even crazier. Like Trump's just storing them all over the floor. Stranger things have happened, but it doesn't actually appear that that's the case. And one growing source of trouble and strife for Donald Trump is that this entire search warrant situation, Trump is not having his legal fees paid by the Republican National Committee anymore. And that's a big problem for Trump. And we're going to talk about that next. You might remember we talked 1, maybe 2 months ago about the Republican National Committee telling Trump, if you declare that you're running for the presidency before the midterms, we're not going to pay your legal fees anymore. And this raised two interesting topics. One was, wow, the RNC believes, maybe correctly, that Trump declaring his candidacy now would be bad for Republicans in November. And that probably is true. And then the second revelation was the RNC is paying Trump's legal fees. What's the deal with that? And the most likely conclusion that most of you came to based on the people that emailed me is the RNC is incentivized to pay Trump's legal fees so that he maybe keeps himself out of some trouble that could be even more damaging to our candidates, our being the Republican Party in November. But it's all very speculative and very, very sort of nebulous. We now have learned that the RNC is not paying Trump's legal fees for what's going on at Mar-a-Lago. And we have a number of different articles about this. And one of them, Politico, is really the main news outlet reporting this in an article called Trump Adds Former Florida Solicitor General to Legal Team Working Mar-a-Lago Probe. A few paragraphs in, you see Trump will have to pay on his own. A person familiar with the matter confirmed that the RNC is not paying for Trump's legal fees related to the FBI's investigation and retrieval of documents at Mar-a-Lago. That's a departure of sorts from the past. The RNC has, for example, paid Trump's legal bills involving New York Attorney General Tish James's investigation. The committee would stop paying Trump's legal fees should he formally declare his candidacy, a step he has hinted at but has yet to take. So this actually has a number of different potential implications. Number one, Trump has been extra flipping out in public. And a little bit later in the show, we're going to look at Trump did a 60-post sort of apoplectic tirade on Truth Central yesterday, 60 posts, including QAnon conspiracy theories. Part of Trump being extra unhinged may be that they're no longer paying his legal fees. And the second element of this is this might explain why Donald Trump is having so much trouble finding good lawyers. They probably know, the lawyers, that without the backing of the RNC for the legal bills, they're probably never going to get paid. And every time I've dealt with a lawyer, they go, send me a $5,000 retainer up front and I'll start billing out of that $5,000. I'm guessing with Trump, they're having trouble getting the upfront retainer money, but this could explain why Trump is having trouble finding lawyers as well. And it could be a very, very crazy 8 weeks between now and the midterms. And there is an indictment watch. I mean, it's kind of a weird term because we're likely to learn about it after the fact, but there is now an open discussion about more like when will the indictment happen rather than if, although I suggest we still wait before we assume that that will take place. So Trump now paying, or not really, I guess we could say responsible for his own legal fees, but whether he will pay them is a different issue. We will have all of these images and pictures and videos, including the one of the secret documents in Trump's house, on our Instagram, which you can find at David Pakman Show. Also, by the way, if you want to see some wacky, wacky hate mail I got, follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com. It's great to welcome back to the program today Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents California's 17th district. Congressman, I have to say, over the last 3 months, there has sort of been new life breathed into the Biden administration and Joe Biden, a number of legislative accomplishments. He seems significantly more energetic, arguably one of the most productive COVID isolation periods of anyone I can think of, Joe Biden had a couple of months ago. Do you get the sense that this will impact November's midterms for Democrats in the House like you, or that these are really siloed accomplishments that the Biden administration is experiencing?
There is a sense of a momentum, and that's because Democrats are delivering. The president delivered student debt relief. We're bringing manufacturing back to America with the semiconductor bill that I led with chips and science. We have the largest investment in climate in American history. So there's a sense that what the president said he would do, what we said we would do in 2020, we are doing. And that is finally breaking through. And there's also a sense that the Democratic Party is more unified than we've been probably since the beginning of the president's term.
Yeah, that seems absolutely to be taking place. And when you particularly contrast to what's happening in the Republican Party, where the RNC is stopping paying Trump's legal bills, and you're seeing significant disagreements on what the 2024 Republican nomination should look like, and whether the presence of people like Liz Cheney is even remotely welcome. It does seem like there is a significantly more unification among the Democratic Party. And also on some issues, there seems to be disagreement. I mean, the student loan debt relief is an example where you have some who believe, even on the Democratic side, there should be no such debt relief at all. People decided to take out these loans and they should pay the loans. On the other hand, individuals who say all student loan debt should be forgiven. And then folks kind of in the middle who say, well, some debt relief is a good idea. Where are you on further debt relief?
I'm for getting debt relief up to $50,000. I mean, the reality is $10,000 is often what it costs someone to do one semester at a college or 1 year at a community college. It's not enough. But I applaud the president for taking a major step. This is going to help a lot of working and middle class folks. It is, again, a precedent for doing more. So I want to applaud him, but say that the job is not done.
On the manufacturing jobs, explain to us exactly how one brings a job back to the United States from overseas, where that will increase the total cost to produce whatever is being produced without making inflation worse. Like, what's the economic sequence wherein we can do that?
Well, actually, producing more things in the United States could help long term with inflation. I mean, one of the reasons we had inflation is we didn't make masks here. We didn't make semiconductors here. So you had to ship them from overseas at $15,000 shipping per container as opposed to $2,000. And the fact that we didn't have enough production meant that we had too much money chasing too few goods. If you increase production long term, that is deflationary. But you're saying in a micro case, well, how are you going to produce it here when wages may be higher, when environmental standards may be higher? I think that's why you need both government collaboration in terms of financing. I mean, other countries have helped finance new factories, new industries, government support on the workforce development at community colleges, and a collective regional economic development effort. That's what we did with FDR to build our economy, and there's no reason we can't do it now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the shipping is certainly a factor, but 15,000 versus 2 for a shipping container, paying dramatically lower wages on every unit on an ongoing basis seems like it would override the shipping cost. I mean, I guess it depends on the product and we'd have to sort of look at the details, but it seems also there probably has to be some shift in the thinking from the American public about the advantages to domestic manufacturing as well. And I don't know that the messaging is really there on that.
Well, I'm not sure it requires a change in consumer behavior. Obviously, it'd be great to buy American, but you could have government purchasing American with all the purchasing power we have. That
Yes.
would make a difference. Second, a lot of the advanced manufacturing has much less labor costs because of automation. It has increased productivity. Now, people say, well, this means less jobs, which is true, but those are going to be higher paying jobs and it's going to mean more competitiveness for the product. So I think when it comes to advanced manufacturing, interwoven textiles, for example, as opposed to traditional manufacturing, that can be done here and will be done here. And the quality is often higher here. That's not just an opinion. The productivity of American workers is more than Germany or Japan. And so I think we have to be very deliberate about the type of production that can be done, the government partnership that is required, and we can do it in a way that is cost competitive.
Yeah, you know, one high-tech product that is being manufactured, at least partially in the United States, is Tesla electric vehicles. And it's been very interesting to see that many on the right, you would think, as I outlined yesterday, they should love electric vehicles. You can charge them at home with solar panels you own and not be dependent, right? There's this self-sufficiency aspect to it. For people who like fast cars, which are associated with alpha males in some right-wing circles, electric vehicles are very fast. There's all these reasons why the right should really be embracing electric vehicles, and yet they seem almost angry about them to some degree. Your colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene and many others are furious about electric vehicles. Are you surprised by the antipathy towards them from some on the right?
I'm not, because unfortunately climate has become so politicized that anything that is almost good for the climate generates skepticism on the right. And that's why I think we could just talk about the new industrialization of America. Let's build the new industries, new factories here. It turns out a lot of that will be clean. A lot of that is going to be clean steel, new batteries, new electric vehicles, new charging station, hydrogen jets, hydrogen planes. We can talk about building new factories, new industry, new manufacturing, and that may cut across the political divide.
On cannabis decriminalization, you and I have spoken about this before. My sense has been it's never been a particularly interesting topic for President Joe Biden. But at the same time, I didn't think he was going to do any student loan debt relief, and I was very, very much wrong there. Do you get any sense that there may be something before November on cannabis from the Oval Office?
I don't. I obviously am not just for decriminalizing it. I'm for taking it off Schedule C for legalizing marijuana. But I think this is something that's personal for the president. My understanding is that he has had people with substance abuse in his own family, that is informing his view. It's obviously a view that I disagree with, but because it's something that seems to be a sincerely held conviction on his part, one that I disagree with, I'm not sure that we're going to see movement on that.
Do you expect that in the long term, the cannabis issue is going to be dealt with more at the state level as it has been so far, or that at some point there will be a federal change?
I think it's going to start at the state level, but my sense is within the next couple cycles, presidential cycles, there'll be a federal change, because you have people on the Republican side, the younger generation, that understands the importance of legalizing cannabis and the medical uses, and the fact that cannabis often is less dangerous, certainly less dangerous than the opioids, and yet more restricted than some of the opioids.
Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming midterms. So if we want to take just one forecast, the 538 forecast says it's roughly a 2-to-1 chance that Democrats hold the Senate. And by a roughly 4-to-1 margin, Democrats are likely to lose the House. Now, on the House, some of the recent momentum you mentioned is not really in those numbers quite yet, but it's a pretty significant hill to climb at this point, and sort of the most mathematically likely outcome is a divided Congress. It seems to me that this will be 2 years of total Republican obstruction to prevent any major legislation, and then using the lack of accomplishments that they cause as justification to vote for a Republican president in 2024. That seems to be what the game plan is going to be. Are you and your colleagues talking about that as the most likely outcome, and what can be done, if anything?
Well, we're still hopeful that we can hold a House, especially after New York 19 and the surprising result there, where Pat Ryan wasn't expected to win. He really ran on abortion rights. We're seeing, as you know, increased registration among young women, in particular in Ohio, in Pennsylvania. So are we underdogs to hold the House? Yes, of course. The president's party always loses seats. We're in a tough economic climate, but we're still focused on how we do that. And the argument that we're making to be able to do that is, where is the Republican agenda? I mean, we have an agenda. I can tell you what we will do on inflation. We're going to try to get childcare done. We're going to make sure that we are providing greater benefits for Medicare. We're going to increase Social Security. We're going to produce more things in America. The Republicans have no agenda. They're basically just running anti-Biden.
Yeah, it's basically just obstruct. There's no doubt about that. But nonetheless, if they successfully do that for 2 years, it's not a super strong argument for Democrats to say, well, yes, we got nothing done, but it wasn't our fault. I mean, it doesn't sound like the type of thing that voters will buy. So what do you do if that does end up being the situation?
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously, President Obama and President Clinton had obstructionist Republican Congresses and both won re-election, and they did it by showing just how extreme the Republican Congresses were.
Right.
So it depends on whether the Republicans overplay their hand, which they're very capable of doing. I mean, if all they're doing when they take power is trying to impeach Joe Biden and do hearings on Hunter Biden and all the other conspiracy theories, then I think the American public will tire of that and say we need more reasonable people. In the past, when they've had the majority, they have overreached. So there's no reason to think they wouldn't do that again.
Yeah, that laptop from hell is really something, Congressman. We've got to look at that hard drive, especially. Last thing I want to ask about: how much in the among your colleagues is there discussion of the Mar-a-Lago search warrant and just the 60 Truth Social posts a day from the former president? Like, something is very, very wrong over there. How much does that play in the day-to-day between you and your colleagues, and sort of considering that side of what's taking place as you think about your 2022 campaign and then moving beyond 22? Or is it wholly irrelevant to what you and your colleagues are doing?
Well, we've tried not to talk about it that much because it's a law enforcement matter, and we've actually tried not to politicize it. I mean, the last thing you want is every Democratic member of Congress going on CNN or your podcast giving an opinion on what the Justice Department should do.
Right.
That said, what does come up are the threats, frankly, that colleagues are facing in this environment, and they're more than I've ever seen in 6 years. You had Eric Swalwell post yesterday about the threat he received, one of his staffers received, really ugly things. And unfortunately, I'm hearing that kind of threats and violence much more from colleagues, which is concerning.
Are there, I mean, obviously, I don't want you to share what's being done, but is there a different or more involved sort of security apparatus that is now involved because of this?
There is, but you can't protect in an open democracy everyone from a culture of violence. I mean, look, members of Congress, we are in parades. I was just in the Pride Parade in San Jose. We do town halls with hundreds of people. We sit in coffee shops, and that's how it's supposed to be. And for many, many decades, people did that at both parties without really worrying about political violence. I mean, obviously, you had crazy shootings and mass shootings, but those were one-off incidents. Now you're at a point where there are members of Congress, unfortunately, who will be advised to sit out at town hall or a parade or community events. And this is one of the real damages that doesn't get talked about enough in our democracy that the right is causing, which is this fear of being connected to people.
Yeah, and sadly, the sort of growing belief among some that violence is an acceptable way to try to achieve political change or to make your opinions known, which is really scary. And that goes to the gun culture aspect as well, right? Seeing guns as a legitimate tool to solve interpersonal problems.
You know, when I was growing up, the one thing, almost a cliche, was, well, in America, we solve our political problems without violence. We have a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, everyone would say that as sort of pointing to why we're the greatest democracy. Yeah. And it's sad to me that something that basic is now being questioned. Fortunately, we still are in a relatively peaceful place, and these are threats, and they haven't become full-born assassination attempts. But in other countries, you literally have political parties trying to assassinate each other. And we've got to be very careful that we don't cross into a line where violence becomes condoned as part of the political culture.
Yeah, we don't want to end up there. And Lindsey Graham earlier this week getting dangerously close to that, but we'll leave that for another conversation. We've been speaking with Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents California's 17th district. Always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, I have some Dr. Oz GIGA-CRINGE for you today. This is, I have never seen anything like this. This is maybe the most awkward moment from any political rally I've ever seen, short of when Trump a few weeks ago tried to kiss that swimmer and she kind of like just tried to get away from him. Mehmet Oz is a television doctor. And of course, as we spoke about earlier, and as we have been speaking about, he's running in Pennsylvania for the Senate. He's the Republican nominee. His opponent is John Fetterman. I would suggest voting for John Fetterman. I think Fetterman is a better candidate. And there was a guy who wanted to ask Oz about abortion, and Dr. Oz straps a blood pressure cuff to the guy. And I don't think I've ever seen anything this bizarre. Take a look at this.
Tell me a little bit about...
So awkward.
Abortion.
Yes.
You know.
While I take your blood pressure, I will answer that question, sir.
Well, you know, is there a limit to it? Or is there a time when women should be allowed to get an abortion, or is it...
This is an issue that really affects this man significantly, you can tell.
Should we ban it altogether?
So, as you all probably know, I'm pro-life, but I have 3 exceptions, and I spoke about them a lot in the primary. I'm a doctor. I appreciate the realities of taking care of people who are struggling. Don't get nervous. No. So I think the life of the mother, rape, incest, these are problems that I think families should have the ability to deal with, and it's hard to expect the government to deal with.
Yeah. What in God's name is happening in this country, folks? If Fetterman doesn't win this one, I might have to end the show and leave the political world and just kind of go out into the woods and just live some kind of primitive life. Because, I mean, and actually, if Oz or Herschel Walker win, I'm going to need to go and have a deep think about my life. Beyond just being bizarre, what doctor takes blood pressure when someone's legs are crossed and they're talking and while they're holding their arm up in the air? I mean, it's terrible blood pressure technique. Wasn't he a cardiac surgeon? He should know this stuff. And politically, here's another very strange moment from the same rally where Oz compares homeless people to zombies with needles sticking out of their necks. And you can just tell he would be an empathetic senator, can't you?
Go down to downtown Philadelphia. I see it a little bit in Pittsburgh now, too, but more in Philadelphia.
I seen it.
There are whole blocks, I mean, like multiple blocks of areas you can't go. There are addicts walking like zombies, into the streets with needles sticking out of their necks.
Really just vivid imagery there from Mehmet Oz. This guy is horrible. I mean, truly, truly horrible. And he has no business being in the United States Senate. If you look at people currently running, I would say any random school teacher would be better for the country as one of the 100 members of the United States Senate than Mehmet Oz or Herschel Walker. These seem like 2 of the worst people, just not worst candidates. Just if you said to me, David, who would be bad people to be in the Senate? I would say, well, Herschel Walker would be terrible. And Mehmet Oz would be terrible to be in this. These people shouldn't be anywhere near the Senate. And yet they could end up collectively making up 2%, right? 1/50th of the Senate. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. Donald Trump has cracked. He unleashed a dangerous 60-plus post tirade on his failing website, Truth Social, yesterday.
Truth Social.
This is now, it's no longer funny. If it was ever funny, it is absolutely no longer funny. Trump woke up and went on a 60-post QAnon-fueled social media spree, writes Rolling Stone. Now, I am not going to publicize the subject matter in detail of what Donald Trump is posting here, but I encourage you, just glance at Trump's Truth Social account and you will see derangement. And I was scrolling. There is no shortage of memes and conspiracy theories here. It's just memes. And this is a former president, folks. It's a former president. Your enemy is not in Russia. Trump retrothing with pictures of Democrats and George Soros. That's a classic. 81 million votes, and I've never seen a pro-Biden hat, shirt, or flag in my life. Right. This is a thing on the right. If there aren't people sycophantically wearing Biden memorabilia or paraphernalia, he can't possibly have supporters. Well, maybe we on the left don't see these elected officials like pseudo deities. I've never gotten gear for any elected official I've supported because I have a life and I will vote for them. And then I move on with my life and I don't get hats or whatever the case may be. Just all, Orwell related memes, just all sorts of, and you could spend an hour scrolling, and half of these memes are QAnon related. Trump posting one, it's like a photo. This one's actually funny, but it's a little unbecoming of a president to post. A Photoshop of Biden falling on the stairs of Air Force One with a bicycle and a helmet on the floor. An ultra MAGA post, America First, FBI sex tape conspiracy theories, weird things of Adam Schiff with an exploding cigar. You could just look redacted with Nancy Pelosi's eyebrows covered with black bars, black censor bars, stuff about the FBI, a picture of a broken clock. It just, and it's just scrolling and scrolling. This is a very sick man. And I believe it is a terrified man. Fundamentally, that's what I believe this is. And by the way, folks, the entire time I've been talking, I've been scrolling through the memes. Trump won with Trump sitting at a desk, a meme of Trump posting to dollar gasoline. And we're still scrolling. Any one of these, if we had a Democratic president posting them, would be cause for significant concern. And it is like 24, even a 30-hour, potentially upper-fueled series of posts. And it's endless. I'm still scrolling, folks. Still scrolling. So listen, I think there's a couple different things going on here. I think Trump is very scared. I think Trump at this point, the RNC has all but abandoned him. They're no longer paying his legal fees. The pictures came out where after all of the denials that Donald Trump took documents, there are pictures of the documents with his, very cliche casino rugs in his apartment or Mar-a-Lago suite or whatever the hell is where he lives. And also he is increasingly being abandoned by more Republicans. Again, the vast majority of the Republican Party is still behind him, but he is increasingly being abandoned. I think he's scared, and I think he is losing it. None of the excuses or the lies are working. He doesn't have Bill Barr or the government at his disposal to try to deflect. He doesn't have Bill Barr out there writing letters that say, Mueller exonerated him, even though when that's not actually what the Mueller report said. The guy is unhinged, and all he has left is his failing Truth Central. And by the way, that will probably be underwater soon as well. So some could call it sad. To me, the sad thing is he'll probably never really face the consequences he deserves. We have a voicemail number, and that number is 219-2-DAVID-P. I'm trying to understand this voicemail, so hopefully you can help me. I believe that this is a conservative Hispanic caller who says white progressives are the worst. And I think he's talking about me, even though I'm Hispanic.
I think that as a Hispanic, white progressives are the most racist. I think you white progressives need to stop telling we Hispanics or people in color in general of what to think. This is just another form of slavery that you're trying to attempt here.
So I am going to say an example where I agree with this caller. Okay. But then most of this voicemail is a dumpster fire. One of the things I don't like is something that has been imposed by mostly white progressives, and that is Latinx rather than Latino, Latina, okay? Latinx. I am a progressive, and I am also Hispanic, and I don't like it. I don't know any actual Hispanic people who use that, and so I've said before, Latinx did not arise naturally from within the community. It was sort of like imposed by mostly white progressives. And that one thing I am against. But most of this voicemail is bonkers.
You're not only trying to tell us what to think, but how to think. I'm sorry. Homosexuality is wrong. Abortion is wrong.
So this is a conservative Hispanic individual.
So why don't you white progressives just simply leave us alone and stop brainwashing our people? Thank you. Bye.
All right. Well, listen, there is a large part. I mean, it should be said that along with Jewish folks, overall, Hispanic Americans are quite progressive. That's that's the truth of the matter. And so don't blame white progressives for Hispanic voters being in favor of legal abortion and being in favor of gay marriage. Most of these positions we came to on our own. So kind of a weird caller, pretty unhinged, with like one tiny little fraction of a grain of truth there. We have a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about the passing of the last Soviet leader, Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev, who passed away at age 91. We are going to talk about California fast food workers very close to winning some historic protections. And we will talk about the incredible viral video of a black pastor watering his neighbor's flowers, and the police show up, and it is crazy, crazy video. All of those stories and more when I am joined by producer Pat on today's bonus show.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money. Everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
Yeah, well, you can judge for yourselves when you sign up at joinpacman.com. You can use the coupon code BIGVOTING22 to get a discount, and I will see you then. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Real quick, go check out GIGA-CRINGE, the UK's most exciting electronic music duo. Their newest release, Connected, is available wherever you get music. It's energetic, melodic blast of electronica, ingeniously infused with acoustic instruments, and they support The David Pakman Show. Check them out using the link below.